Welcome to Upper Pylon 2. Our mission is to provide you with an in-depth review of every episode of DS9 in the order they were broadcast. Tonight's episode is Sacrifice of Angels, and this is Matt in Buffalo.
This is Matt from Arizona.
And this is Chris in South Carolina, and you are cleared for docking. You heard it right, people. Tonight, we watched some Sacrifices of Angels, and we're pretty excited doing this on a non-regular night. So we're all jacked up and hyped and about to go on big breaks, so we're drinking a lot. So here's our synopsis. The Federation launches the attack to retake Deep Space Nine. Full stop. This is the 6th episode of Season 6 and 128th overall. It first aired on November 3rd, 1997. Written by Ira Stephen Bear and Hans Beimler. Directed by Alan Croker. Guest stars are Andrew J. Robinson as Garrick, Jeffrey Combs as Wayun, Mark Alimo as Dukat, Max Grodenchek as Rom, Aaron Eisenberg as Nog, J.G. Hertzler as Martok, Melanie Smith as Zial, Casey Biggs as Damar, Chase Masterson as Lita, and Salome Jens as the female changeling, and of course all of those Cardassians also as prophets, as well as Wayun and so on. So, Matt, you have the notes, good sir.
I do. Let's get into it. Teaser. We open with a Federation fleet led by Cisco facing down a blocking force of Dominion ships, comprised of course, the Jem'Hadar and the Cardassians. The Federation fleet now numbers about 600, the Dominion about 1,200. And we get some good crew interaction on the bridge, namely O'Brien and Bashir reciting parts of the poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade. Interesting that this poem's about the charge of 600 troops into the jaws of death. Coincidence, I'm sure. Now, Cisco hatches his plan to launch wave after wave of Federation fighters to attack only the Cardassian ships in order to provoke them into breaking formation and going off and chasing the fighters, thus opening a hole in anger. And he launches his plan, and the battle starts, as we cut to opening credits. It's really happening.
I believe that at this part, is where they go, they talk about going into the mouth of hell. And one of my kids uttered his first cuss word multiple times in this scene. They go to the mouth of hell, Daddy. They go to the mouth of hell. And I'm like, yes, son. Listen, don't say that around Grandma.
is hell a cuss word?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
In the South, it is.
Yeah, where we are, my grandma, if he used it that way, would not be happy about it.
You could just, I guess you could just chuck that up to us corrupted Northerners. But I was saying hell when I was in 4th grade.
I mean, I was saying all the cuss words at 4th grade as well, I think, but you don't say it around respectable company when you're that young.
So let me get right into it with the battle stuff. I really love that they took an effort to create some sort of a plan here, and it's not just two static ships, the Enterprise and a Romulan warbird just sitting there punching at each other. There is some level of strategy and 3 dimensions to these battles, which is just like, oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. It's really nice. It's really nice that they put some effort into having something here.
And it's real cool to watch. Like, just seeing all these ships, you can tell that the CGI is in full effect here, that they're able to do a lot more than they could before, because you just get starfields full of battleships, and it's glorious.
I know this might be anathema for a lot of fans to admit this, but I feel like this is, the battle dynamics are changing. This is a little bit of Star Wars sticking against Star Trek, and rather than rebelling against it, I'm kind of for it. It makes the action a little bit more dynamic, which I think you need in this war situation.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly compelling. I mean, this is a very well-paced and structured show in that you get all these really interesting battle stuff, which is the Star Wars-y type stuff. But then you take welcome breaks away from that. So it's not being self-indulgent or engaging something that's not Trek, because for every bit of the crazy battle you get, you go and have quiet moments with Ziel and Dukat, and well, Dukat, this is his episode, right? Pretty much. But you have all these cool character moments on the ship. So it's like, yeah, it's that cool stuff, but it's perfectly balanced, in my opinion, with all the other stuff that you need in Star Trek here. Interesting character stuff and just interesting Federation people interacting in the way that they do.
Oh yeah, and that's not to say that I feel like this episode is like losing its identity with Star Trek or anything. This is still very much Star Trek. All I'm saying is that Star Trek battles I'm used to. Same plane, they sit on the same plane, they trade fire with each other until someone surrenders or something. Here you have like the dynamic little fighters going in, the big destroyers and all that sort of stuff. It's very, very, I just watched all the Star Wars movies in preparation for the new one. It's very much in that same vein.
Well, I mean, it's been a while since we brought it up, but Chris, you haven't gotten there and you're watching a Babylon 5 yet. But this is where one of those parts where it's like, man, you do wonder a lot of times where they rip off stuff from Babylon 5. And this kind of mentality is really Babylon 5. Babylon 5 has huge fleet battles where there is the different tiers of it, capital ships going at each other, space stations, and fighters. And it makes all the sense to have it. So are they borrowing from Star Wars? Who knows?
Maybe they're both borrowing from Star Wars. Then I'm sure.
Right, but hey, I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, it's interesting to see this. But you do think, man, whoever got the short straw to fly those Federation fighters, man, that's a tough role because those things are just cannon fodder.
Really? Any of the Federation fighters or like any of the pre-Next Generation ships, because all the movie ships are the ones that get blown up.
Yeah. A small note on your pacing thing about there being the good small moments and not selling themselves short. I fully agree with your point there, Smosky. My children who decided that they all wanted to scream during those small quiet moments and get really, really quiet during the battle moments would disagree with you. So
I know. Well, that's the thing.
The difference with the frontal lobe is huge. Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, I know, but and there's still plenty of adults who want just that. I'll point you to all those horrible compilation videos on YouTube where it's like death metal over just edited together space battle shots from Babylon 5 or Star Trek. But I'm telling you, it just makes it so much better because your impulse, even as adults, we're like, a lot of adults at least want to go like, I want to see more of that space battles. Just make it all that. Man, if you just got all that, you get tired and tuned out.
You get exhausted.
Yeah, so it really does you good to see the rest of it.
You can't just eat ice cream, man. You gotta have broccoli occasionally.
I mean, but 3-minute videos on YouTube of like these battle shots composed to like the Requiem for a Dream theme, it's pretty epic.
It is. It has its place, but I don't want to watch that as like an actual TV show.
No, of course not. I'm just saying.
Right. I mean, well, here, we'll get to one of the other elements I absolutely adored in this. So let's get into Act 1. So on Terek Nor, Dukat safely commands the battle remotely. He stands with Dumar, Weyoun, and the female changeling. And Dukat instantly recognizes Sisko's plan, and he intends to let him have at it for a little while before Dukat plans to send those ships away, create a fake hole in the lines, and then smash them. So here, we'll take a break from the notes. This element I really loved, having Dukat removed from the battle. He's not sitting there on some giant Dominion destroyer.
No, as far as he's concerned, he's already won. This is just like icing on the cake. He's going to let the Federation fleet die a slow death.
Oh, it's a formality. And having him like smartly removed from that just is that great pacing, that of here's the high point and then let's like have these quiet moments but are so in his character. Like, this is just done. Dukat doesn't need to be there for a slaughter, and that's what he envisions this as. He wants to be there on his throne during this moment, and it's just like so smart, and it aids to the character as well as just to a smart pacing of the story.
Now, is this the point where he picks up the baseball, or is that later in the episode?
I think
that was a brilliant move.
I think that's when he first picks up the baseball. I think when he's talking with Weyoun, and that's my favorite Dukat moment in this episode.
Things ever, just blocking wise, to have him throwing the baseball back and forth, telling that story that you're saying right there. Smosky.
Yeah, and that will be a clip because that's such an important kind of interaction. And again, I could just listen and watch the Ducat and Wayun interactions just all day long. So Ducat promises that the minefield will be down within 8 hours and that they'll soon have 2,800 Dominion ships flying through that wormhole, backing them up in no time. And after the founder and Wayun leave, Dumar and Ducat now talk about eventually betraying the Dominion when all is said and done. So here's where I want to take another little break. Man, that is really interesting. Like, and we see at this point, I think people might get angry at what happens to Ducat later in this episode and that he snaps. He is long since snapped and is detached from reality earlier. And I think this comment is we'll teach them their lessons or whatever he said is showing that he is no longer in command of reality. He's living in his own world because how do you actually think that's going to work, Ducat? You just said there's going to be 3,000 ships coming through this wormhole. It's now going to be open. When are you ever going to be able to do this? So it's just like, does he actually have a plan? I don't think he actually does have a plan.
I don't think he has a plan. I think he has like delusions of what it's going to happen. I mean, like, we'll have to get to it more when we get to the scene. But one of the things I always remember about Ducat, one of my most remembered quotes from him, comes in that scene later with Wayun, where he says that, you know, the whole point of winning a war is to make your enemy see that they were wrong to oppose you in the first place. That's something that's always stuck with me. I don't know why, but I think it's a great line and a great piece of writing, and it defines exactly who the character is.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just kind of every once in a while for some big episodes, I like to go on and look at like just what did fans think of this episode kind of at the time and, you know, modern sensibilities. And I think there was some pushback from fan communities about Ducat snapping at the end of the episode. And I just want to point out, no, there isn't. It is there.
No, he's drunk his own Kool-Aid already. Like he's already in psychosis. Now what happens at the end of this episode sends him into a whole new spiral of psychosis, but he was still already gone by the time this episode started.
Yeah, and it's in previous episodes because he's talked about similar type things before, and it's as absurd then as it is now.
To draw a parallel to this character, what I like to think of when I think of Ducat is he's a slightly more mature version of Daenerys's brother in that first season of Game of Thrones. You know, he's demanding his crown, but he's not noticing that he's surrounded by cutthroats, the more powerful cutthroats. And he really has no power, but yet he's drunk on his own power. And it's really interesting to see and watch kind of all unfold.
And like one of the very interesting running lines in this episode is he countermands Dumar's suggestions consistently through this episode. And it turns out Dumar was 100% correct every single time. If he listened to Dumar at any one of these points in this episode, the outcome would be wildly different.
And it's funny, they've really set up Dumar as this guy for a few episodes now. And so you buy it. Like, it makes a lot of sense. It's all seeded in these episodes before where he's doing these little things and he's twisting the knife and he's subtly making maneuvers. And it's interesting because I don't remember him as a character that much before this season.
No, yeah, there was nothing really there.
Yeah.
But now it's, you think he's kind of this disposable lackey in the background. And if you look, no, he's not. He's actually has these really interesting qualities. He's quite capable in some ways, but he's still like the goofy kind of screw up in other ways, leaving the things out. So he's like a very human kind of character. And it's interesting that Ducat's at that point where he is just not listening to anyone around him, and to his ultimate downfall in a lot of ways in this episode.
And not just his.
Damar's going to go from like perpetual screw up to now, after this episode, he's the leader of the Cardassian faction of the Dominion.
A puppet leader to an extent.
How much choices do they have? They put Ducat in charge, and he was clearly already a little crazy before this, right?
I do like that real lackey right at the end of the series that they put in charge. that I couldn't even remember his name, the real
Oh
yes man.
yeah. And then the female changeling has him hauled off and shot.
Yeah, and everyone just sits around while he gets shot. Yeah, that one. I like him. So again, before all that betraying of the Dominion, they have to handle the business at hand here. And this is where I point out Damar is right. Damar wants to arrest and detain all the suspected conspirators until the day is won. Dukat agrees, but is angry at the suggestion that Zial maybe should join them just under house arrest, you see. Dukat says no. When the day is won, he wants Zial at his side. She shall remain free. Now in Quarks, Kira, Jake, and Lita discuss the possibility now of how to stop this minefield coming down. There's only 7 hours left now. And they agree that they need to bomb the central core of the station, knocking out DS9 Terraknor's ability to do much. But before they can do anything, a very smug Damar arrives and arrests everyone but Quark. Commercial break.
I know,
So,
like he's so punchable in that scene. It's wonderful.
oh, it's great. His little snide comment about to Lita about, you have
Even
nothing to hide, especially
especially
you.
you.
Yeah. It's just that it's that perfect Cardassian, right? I mean, it's the guy who thinks he's on top of the world, and at that moment he is. I mean, everything's going their way, and there is no humility to them. It's always just letting you know that they are in charge.
Yeah, it is perfect Cardassian, which is contrast. That's what Ducat used to be. Now Ducat is like crazy pants, like despot. Like he's gone beyond perfect Cardassian.
Yeah, absolutely. So going into Act 2, here we're now on the 9th wave of cannon fodder, those Federation fighters. They continue to press the attack, and Dukat now decides that enough is enough, and he sends some of his forces away, thus creating this fake hole in the lines. Now, back from Sisko's perspective, he sees this hole, but they all recognize it immediately as a trap. But oh well, this still is their only opportunity. The clock is ticking. They know when the wormhole is going to be opened up. They have to go through. So Sisko orders the advance of the fleet into the breach. And we get some, frankly awesome battle stuff here. Tons of Galaxy class ships just all over the place.
And CGI
Coming up
good.
from, and just coming up from below. That's still one of the most epic shots in all these battles. Until the, end of the show. Maybe they define doing that loop or whatever. But where you see the one Galaxy class ship coming up and you think that's going to be the one that takes out the Cardassian ship, and it's another one that comes up from below it. Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, it was good stuff, and it's finally. I mean, it's not exactly like embracing the whole 3D aspect of space the way Star Trek tends to avoid to do. Like, you usually don't have ships going up or down, quote unquote, in space, but it's using more of the plane than we're used to, so it makes it feel a lot more dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea is like, presumably there's like, we have to focus on our main battle group in the middle, which is the Defiant. But there could be a group that's above it, below it, left and right of it, and you're seeing one of the below groups come up to join into the hole that's been created. And you never see those other 4 groups because you never see 600 ships on the screen at one time.
It's awesome the way they could play with spatial dynamics. I just, later, one of my favorite shots from the battle is the Klingons come swooping in from above.
Right. I mean, it's such a cliche that happens in all of space science fiction. It is what it is. But just no spoiler.
Right.
What's that, Matt?
A cliche that works if you use it right. I mean, come on, it's like the end of the original Star Wars, where you have the Millennium Falcon come in at the last minute to let Luke save the day.
Right, but I was going to say it's no spoiler, but it's a tiny little moment in the new Star Wars movie where people, come out of lightspeed below the enemy ship, and you see a perspective from it you don't get to see all that often, and it's just like, just little things.
Yeah,
it's just nice.
Absolutely no spoilers, but they do some crazy ass stuff with lightspeed in the new Star Wars that you've got to see.
Yeah, this isn't the Last Jedi podcast. I guess we shouldn't talk about it too much. But okay, back on the station. Dukat now is in his element as the battle is going very well from the Cardassian standpoint. And that's going to be our first clip. And the first opportunity for CBS to fuck us over.
War is such.
If all of us,
Would you agree? Perhaps
30 minutes.
so much wouldn't get so Cardassians do like to talk. I suppose
I'll edit it.
be failing at times.
No.
The conquerors of
Keep walking.
Aren't you being a bit premature? I don't think so. Not with 2,800 Dominion ships waiting to come through that wormhole.
Those ships aren't going to be here for another 5 hours, and need I remind you, a lot can happen in that month.
Oh. Tell me, Wayoon, have you ever been diagnosed as anhedonic?
You think I'm incapable of experiencing joy just because I'm cautious?
We didn't defeat the Federation by being cautious.
We haven't defeated it yet. And even if we do, it's only the beginning. Holding on to a prize as fast as the Federation isn't going to be easy. It's going to require an enormous number of ships, massive occupation army, and constant vigilance. I look forward to it. I'm sure you also looked forward to occupying Bejor. And we all know what a disappointment that...
On Bejor, I merely implemented policy. I didn't make it. If I had, things would have turned out quite differently.
If you ask me, the key to ruling the Federation is Earth. If there's going to be an organized resistance against us, its birthplace will be there.
You could be right.
Then our first step is to eradicate its population. The only way.
You can't do that.
Why not?
Because a true victory is to make your enemies see they were wrong to oppose you in the first place. To force them to acknowledge your greatness.
Then you kill them.
Only if it's necessary.
I had no idea.
Perhaps the biggest disappointment in my life is that the Bajoran people still refuse to appreciate how lucky they were to have me as their liberator. I protected them in so many ways, cared for them as if they were my own children. But to this day, is there a single statue of me on Bejor?
I would guess not.
And you'd be right. Take Captain Sisko. An otherwise intelligent, perceptive man. Even he refuses to grant me the respect I deserve. You find that amusing?
Not at all. I find it fascinating.
Laugh all you want. History will prove me right.
Man, Ducat's narcissism knows no bounds.
And it's wondered what, like, just listening to the dialogue does when you take away the visuals, because if you listen to the dialogue, you have to think Wayoon knows how crazy he is. That's what he's laughing at.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And like, it didn't really become apparent to me until I just listened to just the words rather than the actions. But yeah, I think everyone just realizes how crazy Dukat is, except for Dukat. And
yeah, go on. Sorry.
And no, I was just gonna say, like, this scene and one other performance from him stands out in my mind when I think of Ducat, but we're gonna come to that later this season.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, that's the part where this is his complete detachment from reality. So the part at the end can't surprise or shouldn't surprise you if you're watching this because again, under what circumstances could anybody who's in any control of their faculties think that the Bajorans would want statues of him? And it's like, and it brings out the more absurdity of like, he thinks he's going to turn the tide on the Dominion when all is said and done.
Yeah.
When, like you point out, Wei Yun is sitting there just laughing at this guy he probably thinks is a buffoon with him. He's like, you're no real threat. Yeah, you might kill this clone of me doing your dumb thing, but in the end, well, who are you kidding?
You're only in power because I let you think you're in power.
Oh yeah, and they let him do his thing, and it's like it's funny in that Wei Yun knows this is all crazy nonsense, but he's letting him play into it. I mean, Wei Yun's probably joking to himself, where it's like, is there a statue of me there? And Wei Yun goes, I suspect not. And that's Wei Yun joking to himself of like, are you are you nuts? Of course there isn't, but he's letting Ducat play into it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I love what you said. You could just listen to them on a loop, just all their scenes, and the scenes through this whole set of episodes have been fantastic between these two, and they've set up this power dynamic between them where Wei Yun is knowingly accepting of his craziness when it doesn't impede what he's doing, but when it impedes what he's doing, like, he will quickly cut him to the bone, as he did a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, that and the whole dynamic then changes when a founder is in the room,
right?
And then Wei Yun has to.
How did they write that so well? That's what I want to know. Sorry,
it's not just the writing; it's also these the actors.
Yeah,
because Wei Yun, Jeffrey Combs turns that switch from just like the goofy comedic guy to really sinister to just ultimate kiss ass. And he can just do it in like boom, boom, boom. And it's just hilarious. He has like what will probably be my UP award winning vote for funniest moment of the season later in this episode. Time to pack our bags, and claps his hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the crazy. He is as nutty as Ducat, but just in a very different kind of way.
No, you know what though? He is what I think makes him more dangerous than Ducat is like he has the ideas of grandeur, but they're not. He's not a psychotic.
Oof. Well, I mean,
he's a true believer in his religion.
Yeah,
you feel like, and that's any true believer is dangerous in more ways than you can imagine.
No, right. We got to remember though. He in that clip says we have to eradicate the billions of humans on Earth.
No, but that's if we're talking, if we're giving DeMar credit for the decisions that he's right, Wei Yun is probably right. Like that would quash most of the resistance.
Right. And for the record, that stuff about Ducat saying you got to win them over, that is straight out of 1984.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, sorry everyone for spoilers who are in their English, sophomore year or whatever, when you have to read 1984. Yeah, that is the idea, is that they make you believe what they're selling and then they'll execute you.
2 + 2 = 5.
Double talk or double speak, and what, all that kind of good stuff. The Ministry of Truth. Yeah, I mean, that is the Cardassians to quite a way, and it's certainly Ducat's mentality.
Ducat, yeah. That's the other thing that I like about his, it's to make your enemy see that they were wrong to oppose you in the first place. If you kill everybody, there's no one to gloat over. There's no one to enslave. There's no one to worship you.
And that's just so informative on how he looks at the Bajorans through this whole time. He just doesn't understand how they never made that switch, and how he's not perceived as just this father figure, sexy figure, just savior of them, just everything. How is he not their hero? And it's just such this crazy absurdity, but it's just so telling of his, character and all that. So let's keep moving. The founder goes to speak, well, the female changeling, I should say. The founder goes to speak to Odo about the good news of the battle. And she talks to him about basically he needs to get over this, as the lives of solids are virtually meaningless compared to the Great Link. But Odo is beginning to waver about this. It's like the Force or something. He senses all these good people out there fighting and dying. So the female changeling does recognize that Odo is cracking and that this is due to his feelings for Kira. And the founder here completely miscalculates in the moment and reveals that Kira is to be executed soon. So, it's best he just get over it now. Odo is horrified at this. And for all intents and purposes, their interaction ends here.
Terrible move. Awful move. What's wrong with you? How do you not know how deep and rooted? I guess she's also had some sense of grandeur.
So this is an episode of True Believers. I mean, she really thought that she had won him over to her side.
Thought she had him won over, and then he straight Darth Vadered her right into the pit.
Yeah.
To continue our Star Wars connections for tonight.
I mean, I think overall, maybe the Odo changing was a little rough. This is where I thought, I could have sworn this female changeling was in more of these episodes than what she was. Because the whole Odo being himself, being seduced, being completely lost, starting to come back to having be back. I thought that was just so much ground to cover. How could they cover that in just a couple episodes here? I would have sworn this was over more of them. So it's a little bit too rapid for my, gut feeling how Odo should be handling it, but it's still really interesting.
And if it's sat in your head as like a lasting image and it feels to you like she was in more, then I would say that's probably a good thing, especially with as many episodes as they were producing.
Yeah, it's just kind of a funny observation.
That being said, though, as rushed as it is, I mean, if you want to do some writing shortcuts, making Kira the breaking point, that does make sense for the character. So yes, it's quick, but at least it's a believable enough motivation.
Yeah, I mean, what more could he loves a person? That's what it is. He loves them. So what more explanation do you need for him having to do his actions? He already wiped out whatever people in Children of Time. Of course, he's going to portray his.
Of course, he was making that episode even more of a 5-star episode. Why did I ever rate it anything less?
Sadly, it's in the my tomes. It's your 4 or whatever you gave it is official.
3.
Sadly.
Matt talked me down to a 3 from a 5. Anyway, I blame Hanson.
I do well.
You swayed me to the dark side for one night.
Well, no, I just went into the right profession then.
No, yeah, we had a good talk, man. It was a good one.
So to wrap up Act 2, we just get another flashback into the battle. The Defiant and its wingmen are taking a beating, but they are absolutely committed here, and they just have to keep pressing into the fight. So let's just go straight into Act 3, which could be the longest act in all of Star Trek. It just is. There's so much packed into here. Let's start chipping away at it. So things are looking really dire on the Defiant. Like I said, shields are failing. More Federation ships are dropping all around them. But then, again, just like any good battle movie, all the Lord of the Rings things, whatever, just when things are looking the most dire, hey, yeah, it's the ride of the horse people in Lord of the Rings. It's all the army of the Vale and Game of Thrones. That whole army that was established that you completely forgot about. Well, they come charging into the battle. A huge fleet of Klingon ships decloaks up above the battle, and they smash into it, just creating a beautiful mess. And this allows the Defiant to bum rush the back of the Dominion's lines. And they smash through with the help of new Klingon wingmen. in what I always kind of thought was an underfinished special effect, but whatever. It's epic. I like it. It's still great. But sadly, the Defiant is the only ship to make it through. All the others are stuck in the middle of that tangled mass of fleets fighting. Cisco orders the Defiant to the wormhole at maximum speed. Now on the station, Weyoun orders a pursuit, but Dukat countermands it. He's saying that the Defiant is no match to the fully armed and operational battle station. Next, Quark grabs Zial and enlists her in the jailbreak. In what little bit could be the comedic relief of this episode, Quark comes in because they managed to knock out the Cardassian guard and then kill the two Jem'Hadar.
Well, and they do it in a way that, like, I'm glad they subverted expectations, because the way they come in, you think they're going to do the old, nail file on the cake routine, and it's really not that. That's just a red herring.
Yeah, it's very nice. Like, you don't want too much comedy in this episode, maybe a couple beats of it, and this was just enough. Pretty much tone perfect, I would say. But like I said, they killed the two Jem'Hadar who are watching over Kira and the rest, and Quark manages to spring them.
Yeah, that was my favorite. That was my favorite comedic moment of this episode. Is like, nobody moves except you. Open the holding cell.
Any scene with Quark is my favorite in any episode. He's fantastic, and in this episode, he plays it so well. That line of like, I don't really want to be in this, but I'm in this, and so what do I do? And then they're like, hey, we're gonna shut down the entire power system, and then everybody gets put in jail, and Quark's just like, what the hell do I do?
Yeah. And it's just awesome because we talked about it, I think, probably in the last episode of just like, or maybe the episode before, that moment where what is that trigger that makes somebody go, that's it, no further, I'm coming off the bench, I'm going to get into this fight. And to see Quark, who for the past 5 episodes was warning people, don't do this, you're going to kill yourselves. That moment of, oh, my brother is going to die, all my friends are going to die.
It was
jumps up.
They set it up beautifully, though, because if you guys remember, I wasn't on that episode, but the couple episodes back for Behind the Lines, when he comes into the Resistance meeting drunk, he's kind of reaching his breaking point where he's like, you know what, I don't like Cardassians. They're mean and arrogant, and don't even get me started about the Jem'Hadar. They're creepy. I want the Federation back. So he may have been drunk, and that may have been a comedic moment, but that was him starting to break.
Yeah, no, and it was a fantastic scene. I think we talked about it on the episode about how great it was. I love that scene, and I think that Quark's kind of arc through this whole thing is really cool because it's kind of a callback to that episode where he turned on everybody, right? And now he's formed such deep bonds with all these people that he's not willing anymore to let them go. He's not willing to have them all murdered. He will actually do some crazy stuff to save them.
You can almost say, in a sense, he's become a true community leader. Call back.
There we are.
And while we're on Quark, I mean, it's true community leader. I just love the moment of when the good guys retake the station. He is out there, just doors are open, ready for business. I have the 2 Dabo girls on my hips, and it's just, he never misses a beat. He's just straight back to his normal thing. And like, a completely off the wall question, is he going to brag about this, or would Quark not be the one to brag about that?
Well, Quark is totally going to brag about this.
You think?
To the right people, Quark's bragging about this. He's finding a small crew of people.
This is like what he's going to do. He's going to do the same thing that he did with the Klingon that he didn't kill, except that this is going to be like an actual true story that he's going to embellish for his bar patrons.
We already know what Quark's going to do with this. We've seen it before.
But I'm torn on this because it's like, would he want people to know he's a softie?
No, he would want people to know he's a hero. Yes, Jinx.
Maybe I can be easily persuaded into that one. So okay, now that Kira is sprung, her and Rom are going to go off and carry out the sabotage. The rest are just going to go hide it out until the end of the episode. Good job, Jake. You were, really helpful through this whole insurgency thing.
He's writing a story. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, what an epic! Just all like chapter 4, the 5th time I went to go get an article shot down by Weyoun. Anyhow, The female changeling continues to try and persuade Odo, but now is interrupted by Wei-un, who wants them moved to a safe place now that a pissed off Kira is on the loose. But Odo's not going to go with her. There is a split there. Now, Kira and Rom are in a running gunfight with the Cardassians.
Before we move on, I just want to say real quick, it was a nice little moment of dialogue and face acting, which is ironic considering that they're both covered in makeup, between Renee Auberjonois and Salome Jans, where she's like, "Are you coming with us?" And he says, "No, I'll be fine here." And she says, "You sure?" We all know what they're talking about, really.
You sure you're ready to give up this this gooey good?
No, but what I mean is, yeah. Well, I wouldn't put it in those terms, but they're really talking about, like, he's not going back to the link. That's what the subtext is.
Right. I mean, you kind of think that she is so reserved. She's doing like tiny little things that are interesting. And I recommend going back and rewatching the moment right at the end where her, Wei-un, Dukat, Dumar are all around the ops table at the end, where news is broke that the battle is falling apart for them. She is very reserved, but if you watch her hand, she tenses it and starts moving it, and she's not letting people see that she got maybe scared, really pissed, whatever in that moment, whatever she's feeling. It's like a hidden thing.
She's pissed. I mean, like, her thing at the end is like an equivalent of like a total fit, where she, like, another point of comedy you mentioned where Wei-un says, "Time to start packing." I love it when she goes right up to Dukat and says, "Looks like this war's going to take longer than expected," with just that snarky tone in her voice.
But that's her after she regains that composure. In like one instance where it's like, oh crap, we just lost this, she like flexes her hands of like, this is not what we prepared for. This isn't what I expected.
No, but how often have you been in, well, maybe it's just me then, but like when you're really pissed off, you just channel it into extra snark or sarcasm and direct it at somebody?
Yeah, but that's her after that moment of her like directing it, like, F you, that moment of her putting it on somebody. But in that moment where it's like that true raw, like, oh crap, you could see it, just like, I'm telling you, it's in her hand, and that's it. That little bit of acting thing.
As a teacher, you perfect the art of this, the channel that energy, that angry energy with the kid who just will not stop disrupting the entire class into some small motion, and then you quietly tell them in the most menacing tone, "Step outside so we can talk." So I feel like that's where she's at the moment.
Yeah. So let's keep it going. Kira and Rom are now in a running gunfight with the Cardassians. And finally, they're cornered in a cargo bay, where they now hear the phaser fire of Bajorans. Turns out the Bajoran security staff, led by our man Odo, finally has surprised the Cardassians.
Who gets a great action one-liner. For Odo, I mean.
I don't even remember what it was.
Never underestimate the element of surprise.
There you go. So the new plan is hatched. Odo will now run off and distract the Dominions forces, letting Kira and Rom do their work. Everything's going to work out here just perfectly. I know it. Odo points out to Kira that, yeah, the link was indeed Paradise, but Paradise is going to have to wait. Again, the tide on the station is turning, and so is the battle. The Klingons have managed to outflank the Dominion's forces. The bad guys' lines are now beginning to crumble. But Dukat remains resolved. As the Defiant is now charging towards the station, it's going to cut things really close. Rom is now furiously working to sabotage the weapon systems, and he absolutely does. Perfect. But it's literally the instant after the station manages to get off one shot on the minefield, completely destroying it. The crew on the Defiant watches on in silent horror.
I was just gonna say the reaction, that oh shit moment from the Defiant crew and from Kira and Rom in the Jeffries tube is great.
Yeah, and it's not at all what you expect. I remember watching this live and very distinctly thinking, oh, really? Okay. It's like that genuine moment of surprise where you swear you think you have the story figured out. The plan always works, right? It just doesn't work here. And that was like I remember at the time, a genuinely surprising beat in the story. And they play it perfectly. Like the crew most of them just go silent, dumbstruck. And then it has to be like even the captain, Cisco to an extent, it's Dax that has to go, what are we going to do? What are your orders? Because she doesn't know. Nobody else knows. It's just like, what do we do now? Somebody tell me what to do. This has all gone horribly wrong. Great moment. And Cisco, in that moment, tells them to take the Defiant into the wormhole to face down the Dominion fleet. Commercial break.
I love how the answer, because like
Yeah.
there's something that I want to like debate with you guys, but I'm willing to bet that he says as much, but I take him at his word that he had no intention of like having the prophets intervene. I really think he's about to commit suicide.
I think absolutely.
Yeah, they established that with the poem, that this crew is ready to do whatever it takes to make sure. But I wonder if that suicide mission is collapsing the wormhole from the inside, or if it's going through and trying to fight it out. I can't imagine that it's going through and trying to fight it out.
No, so that poem, I mean, we kind of to an extent glossed over it, but if you read that that Tennyson poem,
Right.
it is absolutely just 600 people committing to this is it. We're going into this to die, and they do. So that is like very telling of O'Brien in that moment, and Bashir, and like the guys who've been around the block a time or two.
Another little moment of levity that doesn't break the tension, but I just like how Garrick says, like, how does that poem end again? You don't want to know.
You don't
Yeah.
want to know.
And it's O'Brien, the guy who has been through this moment more than anyone's going, this isn't going to work, but we have to do it. And that off chance that some miracle, which turns out happens, is exactly what happens. But they're all going into this knowing, maybe not Rom, because he's so naive and young and like the babe. He is the only one I think in that the crew of the bridge thinking they might get out of this. I think everyone in there is going, there's a 3% chance this is going to work, but we just got to do it. You just have to do it at this point. And absolutely he's going in there. I don't think they've kind of established the wormhole can't be collapsed now. It's too
because they've tried to fire into it.
Fair point. Yeah, no, fair point.
No, it's him going in is just like
they're ready to just battle it out.
Yeah. Maybe I can take out one ship. We'll do the ramming speed at the end to take out one of the big ships, but that's it.
But you know that Cisco's whole mindset is going to be, I would rather, end all of our lives and let us live under Dominion rule.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, basically says as much in what will be our clip. So
yeah, let's go to this is funny because I don't say this derisively at all, but it's just hilarious that this is the exact meaning of the words Deus Ex Machina.
Okay, we'll have to talk about this, but okay, here you go. Act 4 is basically Cisco enters into the wormhole, and him and the crew of the Defiant look on, and they literally see the thousands of Dominion ships pouring towards them. And he orders them to hold off on the attack until you basically see the whites of their eyes. They're going to make every shot count and just try to take some of them down with them. But suddenly, Cisco is whisked away into the realm of the prophets and what will be our next clip.
I feel like it.
Oddly enough, I can't hear a word you're saying.
What?
No, sometimes when we're playing the clip, it gets you get drowned out, but we can hear you when you're normally talking.
Okay. So that's why you're listening to me saying that we may be recording song. Yeah.
I'm not getting any of this. It's bizarre. You're just like essentially muted.
Raise questions.
I didn't ask to come here. You desire to end the game. What game? I don't understand.
You seek to shed your corporeal existence.
That cannot be allowed. The
Must
game
be
must not end. The game? You mean my life? Is that what this is about? You don't want me to die? The game must continue.
Well, the Cisco.
Believe me, I don't want to die. But I have to do everything I can to prevent the Dominion from conquering the Alpha Quadrant. If that means sacrificing my life and the life of my crew, so be it.
We do not agree.
We find your reasoning flawed.
Insufficient. I'm flattered you feel that way, but it doesn't change anything. Now send me back to my ship. This isn't what I meant. I want to return to my reality.
You are the Cisco.
I am also a Starfleet captain. I have a job to do, and I intend to do it.
Cisco is belligerent.
Aggressive.
Adversarial.
You're damn right I'm adversarial. You have no right to interfere with my life!
We have every right.
Fine. You want to interfere? Then interfere. Do something about those Dominion reinforcements.
That is a corporeal matter.
Corporeal matters do not concern us. The hell they don't. What about Bajor? You can't tell me Bajor doesn't concern you. You sent the Bajorans orbs and emissaries. You even encouraged them to create an entire religion around you. You even told me once that you were a Bajor. So don't you tell me you're not concerned with corporeal matters. I don't want to see Bajor destroyed. Neither do you. But we all know that's exactly what's going to happen if the Dominion takes over the Alpha Quadrant. You say you don't want me to sacrifice my life. Well, fine. Neither do I. You want to be gods? Then be gods. I need a miracle. Bajor needs a miracle. Stop those ships.
We are of Bajor.
But what of the Cisco?
He is intrusive.
He tries to control the game.
The penance must be exacted. It is agreed.
The Cisco is of Bajor, but he will find no rest there.
His paw will follow another path.
What path is that?
And back to the real world for Cisco. So, Matt, you basically started to hint at it. I can completely see and understand why this solution could be controversial, but I don't know how we all feel about it.
That wasn't a criticism. Like I said, I say that I use Deus Ex Machina non-derisively here because I think it actually works in context. I'm just saying that if you want the literal translation of the words, they are literally quite saved by the God Machine. I just thought that was funny.
Right, but I do know people got pissed at this. And I don't understand why. I think it does work because it's everything that the show is basically established. I mean, they didn't have to make this the solution to it. The writers chose to make it this because it works.
And it's a pointed choice that adds to the story. So here's my thing. If there's a convention in writing, then it's a convention for a reason. If it's used appropriately and actually builds the story instead of just feels like some quick write out of some problem that you've created for yourself that you had no other solution for, then I'm fine with it. And this doesn't feel cheap at all. This feels set up. It feels like it adds a dynamic. It adds questions. It does a lot of things narratively that are really good. And so, we can call it Deus Ex Machina, and that's fine. And I know, Hanson, you weren't saying it derisively at all, but people would. And I think that's stupid. They use this convention and they use it well. They use it appropriately.
Yeah, to be clear, like you said, they didn't have to do this. They could easily have made it, oh yeah, Rom saves the day and the minefield stays up.
And we wouldn't have realized it at the time, but like in that little exchange, they just told us how the series is going to end.
Mm.
They do that a couple times. The female changeling says he'll join us just in time. I mean, they might not know exactly what that
Yeah, but
the penalty was going to be, but it's there.
But they don't know for. I mean, they're sure, but they don't know for sure. Like, it's a point of contention that like these prophets tell us how the series is going to end, and they know because they've seen it.
Yeah, and it's also the as old as literature story about the hero needing to make a sacrifice for the greater good. I mean, it's biblical. It's just everything. This is Cisco making this sacrifice. And that price he has to pay is just like, no, screw you, expanded universe books. Cisco never should come back from his time with the prophets. He should just disappear at the end. And that's it. He cannot be part of anything anymore because
I like
he's
spending time with Cisco, so I'm okay with the EU bringing him back a little bit.
nonsense.
I
Terrible.
mean, narratively, as far as the show goes, he's dead in my mind. But
non-canon.
I do
Don't
like
worry
spending time
about
with
that.
him. It's fine. If you don't like it, don't go in that realm.
He's with Frodo somewhere.
Look, I love the Thrawn trilogy. Even though they've made these new trilogies, that doesn't negate that other trilogy for me. You know, like I just like spending time with those characters in whatever format they're in whatever multiverse they're in.
Chris, I hate Aftermath.
I do too. It's awful. And I'm
Star
listening
Wars
to it,
book.
and the guy reading it is fantastic. And I feel so bad for him that he's reading such trash. Anyway,
Again, it's so bad that I'm looking forward to finishing this so I can move on to the Wesley Snipes novel.
ooh, and it's a Christian novel too. I was reading some reviews. I was like, oh,
Yeah, I know. So
sorry.
but,
That was your little commercial break in the middle of UP2. Back to the episode.
but yeah, back to the prophet stuff. It's like man, I'm not that philosophy major. I don't know what the symbolism means that he is mostly talking, if not entirely talking to, like his enemies as the visions of people. I don't know what that means. But I think in general, if you're not like interpreting this stuff, if they had like a meaning behind it, I think it completely still works as just like God's work in mysterious ways. You don't necessarily need to have like it totally explained to you.
Well, there's kind of a through line to the prophets, and this is weird, but the prophets, it seems like, pull people who are on the station to do their little deals like this with. And maybe it's just a function of, hey, these were the people in the episode, and so these were the people who made it onto the prophet vision. But I find that interesting too, that somehow this ring has become like the cross for these prophets. Like it's the symbol of everything that they represent, right? So the cross to Christians is the symbol that represents everything that their religion is about. And the station somehow represents the prophets in some way. I don't know. It's weird. It's wonky. I agree with you. Who knows what the philosophy is?
Listen, I don't know if it's this 13% Imperial Stout talking, but Chris, you blew my mind.
The Ring of Infinity, man.
That's impressive. Guys, let's bring it home. In Act 5, the crew of the Defiant, I should say, watches on in amazement as the Dominion fleet simply disappears. It sure helps to have gods on your side, huh? By the way, in researching this, again, this is just that expanded universe stuff. And who asked for this? Who needs it? That Dominion ship, or fleet rather, disappears and then reappears later on and causes problems. And it's just like, send them away to the cornfield. I know nobody needs to know where these
not a visual medium, but my hands in the air. I feel like I need it. I don't know.
Oh, Chris.
No,
You're just being a ball buster.
I love. You know what? I gotta say, I love most of the Deep Space Nine EU that takes place after the show. That part I didn't need. I just needed them to disintegrate into nothing.
To be fair, I haven't read it, so I don't know if you're even done yet.
Data Logan, tell us about where this fleet reappears and what they do. Anyhow, now on the station, the Cardassians and Dominion forces are absolutely flabbergasted that the reinforcements are not coming through. In fact, they check in on the listening posts on the other side of the wormhole they're all gone as well. I would imagine the prophets didn't just get rid of the Dominion. They just got rid of the forces close to the wormhole here. So now the Defiant starts to attack Deep Space Nine, who now has worthless weapons. More good news, 200 Allied ships have now broken through the lines and are hauling ass towards Deep Space Nine. Weyoun, like I said before, drops the absolute UP-worthy candidate. Time to start packing. Claps his hands. And the female changeling is pissed, to say the least, I think, here, saying that the war is going to take longer than expected. And they start to abandon the station and call back all their ships behind Cardassian lines. So this is something we hadn't really talked about before, but clearly their whole intention was before of like wage this extremely aggressive war, burn through ships. That's okay. Doesn't matter. As soon as the wormhole is open back up, we'll have reinforcements. So they were fighting an unsustainable war from their own end. That's why the Federation was being pushed back so badly. But once they realized, oh, we can't get reinforcements anymore, we're overstretching our supply lines, whatever, and they have to come back.
And that's why they end up
This is
losing.
a problem too. Isn't this a gasoline problem? Like they established that in this set of 6 episodes that there's not enough Ketracel. So there's that too.
Well, they're gonna,
Yeah.
no, but they're also gonna. What that means, though, is that they're gonna have to set up processing plants here in the Alpha Quadrant, which they weren't counting on doing. They just think they would have a direct line to the Gamma Quadrant all the time.
Now, was that not a processing plant that Cisco?
It was, but there's more than one. There's more than one because Damar ends up blowing up one when he finally turns against the Dominion in the 7th season.
And
Right, that's the 7th season though. Isn't that
at this point, though, it wasn't like they were making it. It was just a warehouse for it.
Oh, okay.
At some point in this is where they make the alliance with the aliens from Star Trek Insurgents. Because
Insurrection,
Insurrection, yeah, sorry.
How do you forget the best Next Generation?
Oh my
and you're right, it's a throwaway line, but yeah, they end up making a pact with the Sona.
Oh yes, there.
Again, that I love them.
Yeah,
Why do you hate Star Trek and do a Star Trek?
I mean, the best thing I could say about Insurrection is at least it's not Nemesis.
Thank God there's Nemesis, because I would feel real bad saying that's my favorite one when there's not a Nemesis.
Insurrection's a solid 1-hour episode of TNG.
With great visuals, man.
Yeah.
That briar patch is damn beautiful.
Oh, that little CGI alien that they have in the palm of their hand. Just great.
Data becoming a flotation device.
In the event of a water landing.
Great a comedy. James Bond levels of comedy.
The bouncing ball as you sing along.
I love it so much. Sorry.
The manual joystick to fly the Enterprise E. Oh, just
how great.
It's great.
Can a movie be?
The right.
I do remember watching that. It was like my first experience of like a modern theater and having like scared absolute crapless at the phaser sound when they were in the hollow ship coming from behind and then going in front of you. It was my first exposure to surround sound.
Yeah, your first exposure to surround sound. Yeah, I remember. I very happily saw that movie in theaters, but keep in mind I was also 9 years old at the time.
I wish I could go back in time and see it 15 times because that's how much I love it.
Oh, all that Worf pimple jokes.
Not ironically. Let's keep going.
Have you noticed how you're
up? So, okay, like I said, they are now abandoning the station. And Dukat has like completely lost his mind in these last few minutes. Basically, he had it all worked out, man. It was just all there laid out before him. And it all just slipped away. So in that moment, he shuns all the others for that evacuation. He just runs off to find his daughter. And during the evacuation, Weyoun asks the founder if Odo will be joining them. She says no, but in time he will. That's the other really nice foreshadowing bit. They probably didn't know how that was going to work, but hey, it's there.
I think they knew they wanted that as an endpoint. They didn't know how they were going to get there, but I think they wanted that as the endpoint.
But I mean, they didn't even. Well, maybe, but I mean, that could easily be just something like if they went 20 seasons, that's when he joins back. It's open and ended enough that you didn't have to have it at the last episode, but since it's there, bonus points. It's good stuff. So in our final clip, we will find Dukat now stumbling upon his daughter in a hallway. Roll it.
Father!
Oh, Zial.
I've been looking for you. I heard about the evacuation.
You're all I have. All I care about.
No matter how much I try to hate you, I can't.
I couldn't live with myself if you hated me.
Come. We'll talk on the way home.
Home?
Cardassia, we have to leave here, Ziel, before the Federation arrives.
I'm not leaving.
These people are our enemies.
They're not my enemies. I'm one of them.
That's not true.
Father, I helped Major Kira and the others escape from the holding cells.
Do you know what you're saying?
Yes, I do. I belong here. Goodbye, Father. I love you.
No! Murder! She's a traitor! Zia! It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Zia, I forgive you. It's all right. We're out of time, sir. The last ship is waiting for us. Zia, please hear me. I love you. I love you, Zia. No. No.
So it's no small feat to make Dukat have him have an actual heartbreaking moment, right? I mean,
I was
that's pretty
gonna say,
incredible.
like, as crazy and as psychotic and as despotic as he's been throughout this whole episode, damn it, do they make me feel bad for him at the end?
Yeah, and yeah, there's no question. They totally humanize him.
Because I'm kind of, as a viewer, like, I'm kind of getting ready to do what Dukat was getting ready to do. Is like I want them to gloat over how wrong he was because he was so sure in his arrogance, but they do it in a way where it's like it would be no fun to.
Right. But even in her death, he still is crazy.
Oh, he's still crazy, and I would even.
I don't think she asked for your forgiveness, dog. Like, she did this because this is what she believes in.
Yeah, but
awful.
But I would say that, like, we all pretty much agree he was pretty much far gone. But to use another Star Wars metaphor in this whole episode that we used for Star Wars metaphors, any hope of him ever coming back to maybe the light side dies with Zial. As soon as he loses her, that he's gone.
I would argue that from the beginning there was never a chance for him.
I'm just saying how we played around in seasons 4 and 5 a little bit, and even like.
You know what though? I never took those things seriously because, like, when they revealed that he was keeping Bajoran women as sex slaves, like,
that comes later.
You don't come back from that. No, I feel like that was already, wasn't it? Zial is a product of his sex slavery.
Okay, yeah, you're right, but we don't actually see it until later this season. When we see it with Kira's mom.
That guy, I don't know that you come back from that.
No, all I'm saying is that whatever hope there could have been for the character is gone as soon as Ziel dies.
Any small light, dead.
But that's the thing. It's like I'm going to side a little bit more on Chris on this. I don't think there was ever that there because he is such like a sociopath, psychopath, whatever the technical right term might be. He can still love her, but he was never above using her still.
Oh no! All I'm saying is that this is the catalyst that takes him into the Power Wraiths, which is what we're going to be dealing with him from now on.
Well, sure, but I don't think her being there would have stopped him ever under any circumstances.
No, but the death of her is what sends him over.
So I have a question regarding that. Oh, well, but first off, before we get in, I don't want to get too far from the clip. Him, like, I forgive you, and then him just kind of moaning no at the end. Very good, very heartbreaking. Good stuff. I do have a question, though. Would you have found it more interesting? I have no problem with how they did it, but would it be more interesting, better, more rich, whatever, if Dukat killed her himself? I think it still could have been completely within his capability of doing it because he's in at his weakest moment. This is his whole dream finally just ending. I think he could have been completely capable of killing her in that moment.
So we're imagining like a you what? And then like a rage kill, and then
right. But then I don't think that would mean that he wouldn't have that same regret of like killing her, but then still saying
he does it in his rage, and then he looks down and sees what he's done. Like he sees the word.
As long as they don't play it like they do at the end of episode 3, where it's like in your rage you killed her.
Right, yeah, just that, yeah, that no. He says no still, but yeah, in a different way. Because I think you could still have like practically everything the same. Like he would say, I forgive you as he's like killing her, still regret it. And then that crazy moment at the end where he's forgiving Cisco for killing her, even though he did it, because he's so dissociated from his own role in all this. Like maybe I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. I'm like maybe I would want him to kill her.
I think it definitely could have worked. I think it works both ways though, because the way they end up doing it, you see him what he's trying to do and trying to get her off the station is like, Rome is burning around him. He's lost this huge victory that he thought it was within his grasp. So he thinks that the one thing that he can still do is, well, at least I'll still have my daughter, right? And so when she betrays him, that's one thing. When she's killed in front of him by someone else before he's even had a chance to make any kind of reconciliation with her, that's worse.
Yeah. So narratively, and you can get your bingo cards out right now. If this is pro wrestling, you establish the heel Dukat, and then you establish his buddy. And then the buddy does something, and so you have the current running theme of I got to get whoever I'm getting, but then you have that background running thing of, and when that's done, I'm going to get this guy who, whatever. So narratively, as a writer, if I was writing this, I would want Damar to do it only because you then have the option open if you wanted to chase that strand or that piece of the tapestry down of Damar getting his from Dukat at some point. Now, I don't remember if they ever do that, but it would be an option at that point if Damar killed him. If Dukat killed him, the same thing happens with him that happens going from here. So you haven't created a new strand for you to play with at some point if you feel like picking up on it, and you're going to do the same thing with him anyway, either way. So for me, this just allows more options. So if I'm the writer, I would choose the way they did it, but I think you're right. It could add more power if he just did it, if you knew where you were going with this, but they don't.
But the underlying point is that I think it works both ways.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't disagree that it works both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this as is works perfectly fine. But the idea is like Dukat's still, that first tier, guest star on the show. Damar, even when he is awesome, is still that second level thing. So it's like if Dukat did it himself, you would still have like a lot of possibilities there. It's different. He wouldn't have to do like a revenge possibility of Damar down the line. It would be him exploring it himself, him confronting Cisco when they are together on a world, in the last episode where he still blames Cisco, even though Dukat was the one who pulled the trigger. So it's like, I think there would still be no shortage of material to explore had Ducat pulled the trigger himself. It would just be different.
Right.
Material.
I would say though, if you're going to make Ducat the one that kills her, then I would stage the scene exactly the way it goes with the exact same dialogue, except that when she turns to walk away and she thinks that they're reconciled, he shoots her in the back.
You're a terrible person, Matt Hansen.
Oh, that's the crazy thing.
He was when he was going to crush all those people and bury them under the sand.
I'm just saying, like that's how it would go. He would like, yeah, I forgive you, and then he would
He was
kind
going
of
to put them in a pit. Sorry.
No, he would kind of like he would say he would forgive her. She would turn around. He would kind of look at the ground and then raise his arm like this and then shoot her.
Like silent, like gangster style. Matt's doing the visual podcast.
No, I'm just saying, like, head down, kind of like this.
But I'm telling you, do your headcanon thing. Go back and rewatch that scene, but just erase Dumar from it. I think it still would work perfectly well if the phaser was in
raised Dumar's
hand.
stock. Again, wrestling, you raise Dumar's stock here. He's second tier. Now he's like second and a half tier. He's like almost main event or almost co-main event.
Well, that's true. I mean,
now he's the more legit character. He matters.
Right. My alternative universe version of the story is like demoting Damar's role in all this.
You gonna leave that man in European title contention? Come on. Let that man get his Intercontinental Championship.
And Chris, for future reference, I'm going to need every like wrestling analogy to be put in context of like the barbershop of Shawn Michaels throwing Marty Jannetty through the window. That's the only language I really understand from it. Nice. Anyhow, let's bring it home, guys. Like we saw there, Zial is dead. And we cut to the celebration of the fleet of Federation ships arriving on the station. There's delightful reunions everywhere. And basically things are getting back to normal really quickly, except for Garrick. He walks to the infirmary where he finds the corpse of Zial being watched over by Kira. She tells Garrick that Zial loved him. And Garrick says, I guess he'll never find out why. And in the end, we end up seeing a very broken Ducat now in a holding cell, babbling about his daughter. Sisko has him removed to see if Bashir can do anything to help him. And as Ducat walks by, he turns to Sisko, saying that he forgives him as well, and handing him the baseball as we cut to closing credits.
Whew. Man, I don't think there's a lot more to unpack from this episode, but what a finish. Like, to really round out this whole story. Just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bold choice, but it's a great choice where, this is a victory. They get the station back. This is a huge win for the Federation, but they ended on such this note of melancholia.
Yeah, it's that mini Babylon 5 ending of like, hey, we just won the giant battle. And your impulse is rush to the credits, leave everybody on a high. No, wait. Actually, there's
character moments we need to have.
There were consequences.
Yeah, PTSD characters of somebody you didn't think you would feel for if they had that. Characters that we, not major ones, but ones that we liked and Zial died. There was sacrifice. It's just like, good. Give these episodes at least some time to breathe at the end. And they do that. And it's just awesome. And that it's absolutely heartbreaking. Garrick, just like somebody at the end here who...
I also wanted to commend the writing for Garrick. Is like, that's the perfect amount of grief that he should show for Zial's death.
Right.
But it's so telling.
Yes, but yeah, you could tell that he's hurting.
Oh, he's hurting so bad. And then that's the thing. It's like they let you see just enough of him hurting it. But he's hurting a hell of a lot more than what he's showing. Because that was his last connection to home. Again, he had something back. His dad's now dead, but he has at least some connection in something, in a very intimate, personal thing. And that last thing has been robbed to him. Because that's like possibly the one person that he would open up to. He's not opening up to Bashir.
No.
Everything with Bashir is a goddamn game to him.
No, and when Bashir wants him to open up, he's got to go through, the ringer to get him to open up finally.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So
and
it's just...
You've been crapping on the EU a lot. Rightfully
constantly.
so, for the most
Oh, endlessly. There's
rightfully
nothing.
so for the most part. However, I will say that the EU has handled Garrick's storyline fantastically. And if you haven't already read the Una McCormick novels of Garrick being in control of Cardassia post all of this, it's a really beautiful story of him continuing to struggle even afterwards back with his own people. That continues kind of some of these through lines that are really cool about him and all this. So anyway,
Yeah.
that sounded more like a meh.
Yeah, it's a mess. Listen, again, you're hitting me at a bad time. I'm in the midst of a horrible expanded universe book, and it's just
can't help you with that one.
Yeah.
The next one we read should be one of those old ones, Truce at Bakura or something.
Sure. Guys, let's take it to final thoughts and ratings. Tell me why this is a 5-star episode. Chris, do you want to start out?
I would love to start. I haven't started in a while. I think that this episode does all of the things. It contains philosophy. It contains war and battles and phaser fights. It contains beautiful character moments. And on top of all of that, it contains really fantastic writing and acting. What can you give this other than 5 out of 5. Brilliant, bilious battles, beating back belligerents boldly.
Thank you, Chris. I'll go second. Matt, you can wrap it up because what more can I say? It's just, I just want to emphasize again, I made the point earlier. This is like the perfectly paced episode. They give you as much action as you need. They give you just enough. Like Chris said, you just can't eat ice cream all the time. They give you enough, but then all the rest is just as rich and just as awesome. And this is like Ducat's just killer episode. He is great. Every supporting character from all the villain side is just great. What more could you want? It's like, I thought this was going to be a super short potential episode recording because it's just all action. It's not. There's so much more going on in this episode. So of course it's 5-star. It's the perfect ending to this more or less great arc. Just great stuff. And it's just, man, what I would give for Deep Space Nine to be this kind of a thing for even more of it. Because when they have jumped in, they knew what they were doing and they killed it. And this is just a great 5-star episode.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more I can say. To coin a phrase that would have been used mostly around the time that this episode aired, this episode is all that in a bag of chips. It has everything that you want. It has great action, great character moments, great climax. It is mostly a climax, but I will say that there are a lot more character moments than even I remembered. And it's just fantastic. There's not much more I can add to that. This is absolutely a 5-star episode, and I give it that without reservation. And if I had my druthers, I'd probably go back and give last week a 5 too, just to see how well these work together. But in the interest of consistency, I'll let my old rating stand. But this is absolutely a 5-star episode.
Yeah, to point out, the last episode did just set this one up so perfectly. I think they're a perfectly paired up 1-2 punch.
Well, guys, we loved this episode, obviously, but we would love to hear how you felt about this episode because we just love to hear what you guys think. So we're actually going to throw to our roving reporter who's got a lot of your thoughts on a previous episode. See you in a minute. Man, all right. So
yeah, he had a lot of thoughts on the previous episode and probably a lot of alcohol in his making those.
No. We're in the midst of a very sober run of recordings.
Sober run because they're getting recorded right after work, like
pretty much. Yeah, this recording maybe not so much, and whatever short Star Wars recording we might do after this, yeah, it's going downhill.
Well, guys, if you would like to do what you just heard done, you can do that too, and we would love to hear from you, and we would love to read and respond to you in various ways. You can do that through through our email at up2podcast@gmail.com. You could also hit us up on the forums at forum.trekmayfamily.com, where we sometimes even go in there and respond to you as well, right there in text. You could also hit us up on Twitter if you dare. We're in 240 characters now, right? 240 characters. We can lambaste all your opinions on Star Trek if we want.
280. Chris.
280. Ooh, sorry. Got to get that extra 20 in there. At UP2 Podcast on Twitter. We also all have individual Twitter accounts. If you want to follow us there right now, it's mostly Star Wars talk. I'll just go ahead and handle that for almost everybody. Hanson, what's yours?
At mhansen 0207 HANSEN. Yeah, all Star Wars talk. Some Black Panther and some Avengers Infinity War talk, but yes, mostly Star Wars talk at the moment.
And I can be found at Pro Sub-Zero, where how dare you? There's also Alien discussion and how awful Alien Covenant was. Like, oh my god, it's like
We'll
just
talk about
trash.
off air, but yeah, I was really let down, and I was not expecting to be let down.
And
Nah.
I'm also on there, and I'm fighting the good fight that we'll talk about later that you'll hear on Christmas Day. Hopefully. I don't know when the timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly things, when these will come out together, but you'll hear my good fight. But I'm at Carnivore J, and Blair's still on there. He still hasn't changed his handle at Medic, some numbers that I can't ever remember. 1489, 1522,
1349.
3276. Blair, I love you. Go back and listen to previous episodes if you really want the numbers, or try to hear Hanson over me mumbling. Also, we can be found on.
I feel like everyone's drunk on this call except for me.
Also, we can be found on Facebook, Upper Pylon 2, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast, and that is where we interact with you under the guise of UP2, and you never know who you're talking to. You could also, if you're
at the end of the comment,
if you're also so inclined, you could drop us a 5-star iTunes review. We hear it helps us, but we don't actually make any money from this gig, so whatever. But 5-star iTunes reviews.
On the list up of the names when you search Star Trek under podcasts, Chris.
I mean, yeah, I don't have the kind of vanity that thinks that I have to be heard. If you want to give me a 5-star review and I can be heard, that's fine. But whatever. I also, through listening to all these podcasts, I've come to really despise people who are like, it really helps the podcast, man. It helps us a lot. I hate those guys. But yeah, you could do it if you wanted to. If you really
say that every week, you hate me.
kind of. No.
This episode's gone so downhill so quickly.
5-star iTunes reviews. Give them to us. Give it to us. Also, we will be back with you next week.
Next week, when we
invited. You are cordially invited.
Yeah, I was gonna say next week when we get to the wedding that we've all been waiting for, right, guys?
Oh yeah.
Especially Matt has been waiting for. But for now, he wanted the world's whereabouts from the stars and locked the secret in a pocket watch. This is Chris in South Carolina.
Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell. I'm Matt in Buffalo.
And this is Matt from Arizona. Closing hailing frequencies, docking clamps are open, and you are cleared for departure.